Well, hello and good morning, friends, and happy Father's Day to all of you folks out there in the community that are celebrating today and celebrating all the dads and the fathers and the folks in this community that have supported you with their strong, manly abilities. Right, Joe?
That's right.
Happy Father's Day, Joe. And happy Father's Day to my dad out there, too. I don't know that he usually watches this, but every once in a while, if my mom's watching it, she'll be like, oh, hey, check this out. So, all right. So I today wanted to spend a little bit of time talking to you about seeds, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to do this AMA style. I really like that we started that up in May, and it turned out really good. And so as you jump in, be sure to say hi so that I know you're here and we can do some interacting. And then ask me all the questions you may have had for seeds or seed planting. And one of the first questions that you might have to ask are, Aislynn, what's going on for you in the next coming up months? All right, I want to tell you about that. On June the 26th, I am doing a farm and garden tour out at the farm, 9 a.m. There is a cost to it. So we're going to do a farm tour, and then we're going to go into our nice little pavilion. We'll have some sort of a little farm snack, morning farm snack, and then we're going to do some garden talks. It'll be an awesome opportunity for in-person after we've toured some of my gardens at the farm, looked at things, to ask me some questions in person and to really get a little bit more of the hands-on learning opportunity by actually being in the spaces that I grow in. So if you're interested in that, you live in my area, just DM me and I'll make sure to get that information to you so that you can schedule yourself to be a part of that event. And definitely bring your kids. They are welcome. We want to have them out there and we want to teach them how to grow in their gardens as well too. Other things that are coming up. One of the things that you may have seen recently that I did as a new launch was the concept of Aislynn's larder. The first step that I'm doing with that is actually for chefs, and I had 5 available and I've already had 1 investment. I'm calling these investments because you're investing pre-season as I begin to get ready, purchasing seeds, purchasing equipment, anything that I need to do to prepare for the 21-22 season. And it helps me get kicked off, but it secures your access to some of my overflow of abundance. So I've already got 1 chef, that RO Steakhouse, that is doing that project. Any other chefs that are interested out there, I have reached out to a few of you. I know I'm going to have some feedback from that in the very near future. And in second to that is that I have some other ideas coming up along with that Aislynn's larder concept. Maybe a flower club, maybe some family investments, that types of thing. But I need to really get a feel for how I flow through the next few months as I prepare for the seed planting season. Of course, the podcast launches every Monday. We will launch a new one tomorrow morning. And if you're catching this live, be sure to say hi. But if you're catching the replay either here on Facebook, do hashtag replay so I know that you came in and checked it out later. Or if you're checking it out on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe, like, and leave some comments. Ask me some questions. I'll go back and answer them later on. All right, so let's get started and let's talk about seeds. And why am I talking about seeds on June 20th? The reason is because we are beginning to get a real feel for some shifting in our climate and some shifting in changes, and it's time to start preparing for our southern region's first seed planting that's going to happen truly in October. One of the things that I've begun to officially decide as it relates to harvest season and when to harvest and all of those types of things is that October isn't really a great harvest season for us. And the reason is because one of the things that's essential for us in terms of planting is the soil temperature. And what happens for us in the summertime is that's when things get hot around here. And we're not talking a little hot. We're talking 100-degree heat index from 70 to the 90-degree temperatures almost overnight. And not only does that create heat in the air, but it also takes all of that moisture that we had from the recent flooding in the ground and creates a lot of that microclimate in the soil, that microbiology in the soil, and that actually creates its own heat. That's how you get compost to break down, in fact. You create the heat inside the compost bed, and that breaks down the materials And so that's kind of what we're going through here. But our temperature of our soil, if you take the temperature of our soil, it's very high. So some things that we have to pay attention to is the shift in temperatures when the soil temperature begins to decline, and that's going to have to do with direct sowing. However, in order to get things ready to go in the ground when it's time to direct sow seeds or put plants in the ground because they can manage the heat and the irrigation that we have available for them at that time, we have to begin planting in July and August. And yes, we do get an opportunity to have a second season potentially of tomatoes, squash, eggplants, all of those types of things, and to start things like green beans in the ground, summer squash in the ground, some of those types of things. So growing down here in the southern region, in the Zone 9 region, is a little bit different from how things grow in the rest of the world in terms of timing and planting. It's a little bit more of like a broken season. But why do we want to start talking about that now? Well, because now's the time to begin preparing your seeds, deciding what you have, looking at your catalogs and seeing what you want, and begin to place the first orders of the first seeds that you're going to want to plant right now. As a matter of fact, I'm ready to go on my first order of $200 worth of seeds, right? Okay, so questions. Let's start there, and then we'll just kind of roll from that.
I have a question. If you go to a local nursery, you're going to find a lot of plantable plants in tiny pots. And I believe, and this is the question, is that kind of beginner style? Is seed planting next level?
I think that it certainly can be. I think that if you have a desire to really have a true return on income, return on investment that is sustainable, then you have to begin planting your own seeds.
Seeds are less expensive than those plants I was talking about.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And what often happens sometimes for me is that I will actually purchase a plant start in the nursery so that I can actually have access to the seeds that then will grow later on, that I will use later on in my gardens. A great example of that would be my salvias. Like a lot of my salvias, I pretty much just bought one plant in the nursery ages ago, and it was enough to be a successful plant that reseeded itself, and then it reseeded itself so much that I can now dig up babies and replant them in little pots, and then have my own little pots of the plants that I purchased originally from the nursery. So it always comes back to seeds when you're talking about sustainability. And oftentimes, especially if you're trying to do somewhat of a market gardener type of situation, and I would say that probably a lot of my audience isn't necessarily, but for those people that are coming across my feed that are looking towards developing their market gardens and really starting to create either some farm to table stuff on their own property, or wanting to sell at the farmer's market, or even just have kind of an online farm stand like I have, you've got to understand that when it comes to scaling, you have to be in timing with the nurseries a lot of time in terms of when you get your product, because that's when you want to put it in the ground so that you can extend the season of production for that particular vegetable or fruit as long as you possibly can. Yes.
I've got a great question here, and of course if you've got a question watching, just type it. I'll relay it to Aislynn, but it's not seed related. You want me to accumulate those for the end?
Yeah, no, go ahead. It's fine.
Okay. Jody asks, I'm feeling defeated because my tomato plants are not blooming, and when they do, they won't ripen.
It's past the point of that. That's the reason why. When our temperatures get to the point of 85 and above, your tomato plants won't set flowers anymore, and definitely won't set fruit. So if they hadn't already set flowers and fruit, which is the reason why essentially we start planting our seeds in like December and January for tomatoes, so that we have plants to go in the ground as soon as we get past a freeze season, which may or may not be February 14th. This year it wasn't. But that's the challenge with it. And if you think about, like, if you had a well-established plant, like I had a lot of plants in the ground, I had a lot of seeds in the ground. My timing was really good for getting my seeds started in December and January this year. But I lost most of my mature tomato plants with that freeze because of the way that we handled the freeze and moved things around. And so I lost most of my tomato plants. So even
I'm never going to hear the end of that.
It wasn't really your fault.
I
It
know.
was a combined effort and a learning experience. We'll call that hands-on learning. Because if we put them in the garage, and normally we wouldn't have even moved them, but this time we actually did move them, and that still wasn't enough. right? So, but what happened with that is that it gave us a really short window this year to get our tomatoes to the point of flowering and fruiting. Now, there's a lot of bushing tomatoes, small bushing tomatoes, a lot of tomatoes that are planned for the particular season of heat. They can handle it a little bit better than that. And there's also, if you're going to plant different tomatoes that are have a one season production, like really truly annual tomatoes, as opposed to like vining and heirloom tomatoes and things like that, then you're going to end up with not as much production when you have a short season, and that's what happens. So the answer to that problem, and I don't consider it a major problem, because what happens with me is then I just have beautiful, delicious tomatoes in the fall. Because then what I do now is I keep those tomatoes protected with enough water. If you've got them in a container, that's going to be ideal, because then you can just keep them in a somewhat shaded space, make sure that they stay watered and healthy. And then as soon as the temperatures drop in the fall below 85 and start staying kind of in that 85 range, then you'll start to produce tomatoes. And if you can keep it protected through the freeze season, then you'll have tomatoes again in the spring. And then you turn your tomato plant into what it actually is, which is usually like a 2 or 3 year annual, rather than just a 1 year up and die. When you treat your plants that are like pepper plants, eggplants, tomato plants, when you treat them like an annual that just only grows in one short season, and we have a really weird short season like we did this time, you end up not getting enough produce to make it worth your time.
So does she remove all the tomatoes that won't ripen? They're on there, but they're not ripening.
If they're on there and they're not ripening, they'll be fine. Just leave them alone. They'll get warm enough. They're probably wherever they are. They're just not. It takes a while for a tomato to ripen. Wherever you have the plants at, they might not be getting quite enough heat, right? And because the heat is going to set them into ripening really fast at this time of year, because it's so warm. If you see any yellow or red within that tomato plant, then you can actually put it inside of a brown paper bag, and it will ripen a lot faster.
Take it inside.
Yeah. But this time of year with the heat the way it is, they'll ripen. They might have just been late setters, and because they were late setters, they're just not ready yet.
So
I have tomatoes. I have larger sized tomatoes still that are still on the vine, that are still working their way to getting to the point of being ripe.
You remain in a general giddy euphoria, but there are a couple of times a year where I know the giddiness is going to go off the charts, because I hear these words: I think it's time for me to order seeds.
Right, exactly. I love seeds, and I was starting to get like, cash flow wise, I was like, it's time for me to order seeds. It's time for me to order seeds. Like, if it gets to July and I haven't even considered ordering seeds, then I'm behind, the truth is. And so that is one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about. So I'm going to be placing my seed orders here in the next couple of weeks. Begin looking at your seed catalogs in July. Begin looking at your current seeds that you already have from the
What if I
past
don't have
seasons.
a seed catalog?
You can order a seed catalog online. I'll tell you a few of my favorites. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. I love these guys. I think most every seed that they're growing is very vital. Is also geared more towards southern climate. I believe they also give you some indicators of which plants are going to do the best in Zone 9. And remember that if you live near and around me, I'm in Zone 9A, Zone 9B. That's where both of my garden spaces are. So those are the types of things you're going to be looking for that. And then the other types, so Southern Seed Exchange is a great one. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange is a good one to order your catalogs from. High Mowing, I've been pretty happy with their success of their stuff. I'm actually thinking about setting up a wholesale account with these guys, where you could actually purchase seeds through me from them. That's something I started looking into last year, and I may still go ahead and activate that this year. These are just some of the companies that I've gotten in the mail that I haven't necessarily ordered from, but I'm always curious to see what different places have. So a lot of times I'll just go ahead and order something so that I can get a feel for what types of products they're doing, what types of plants they're doing, and whether it's anything that I think will go in my area. I also always like to look to see whether they're giving me an indicator of zones. So you can see here, this one says zones 3 through 10, and that means that this plant is more likely to grow in my area. Now that's an important thing. Like if you do a search, and I've been doing a search because I want to get an idea for what's the best timing of the year to plant the asparagus seeds in order to get the crowns. And I think it's going to be challenging for us to plant by seed, so we're going to be looking for crowns down here. But even as I'm looking for crowns, most people say don't grow asparagus in anywhere below zone 8. And I find that to be incorrect because I actually have grown asparagus at the Learning Garden and other places that have done very well down here. So it's just a matter of sometimes finding the right product, finding one that's going to work in our area. And it may be that it was originally a hybridized asparagus plant in order to get it to grow in our tropical heat type of situation. Asparagus is actually a perennial plant. So it has to stay alive through the heat and through the winter in our area in order for it to be a production plant. So things like that are things to look for as well. And like I said, looking through some of these catalogs, I have ordered from Gurney's before. This is a company that I do like. I order a lot of their stuff every year. I've ordered both seeds and trees and plants, all kinds of things like that from them as well. Territorial Seed Company, another fantastic company. I have been very, very, very happy with all of the products that they have available. The thing that I have ordered a lot of from them has been peppers and squash. They have a nice variety of pumpkins and watermelons and all kinds of things like that. Osborne is really probably more for bigger scale farmers. Their price point is a little bit high, but is really good if you order large quantities of seeds. So as I get bigger and grow more things, I might start ordering from that company as well, because they did give me quite a few samples of their seeds, and their seeds are high quality. After a couple of years, they're still vital. They're still very vital. Okay, Johnny's, of course, as well, and then, of course, Baker Creek Heirloom. These are two that I talk about on the regular basis. Johnny's is my absolute favorite. It's where I'm going to order from first almost every single time. And they've got all kinds of varieties of seeds. They are the small farmer seed company as far as I'm concerned. Baker Creek Heirloom is fun. Baker Creek Heirloom's vitality isn't as good as I would like it to be, but Baker Creek Heirloom has the rare seeds. I mean, that's literally their rare. They are the rare seed company. So if you're looking for the pretty colors or the interesting flavors, things that are a little bit different, Baker Creek Heirloom is the one to go to for that. Okay.
Francis says, I've had some great luck by planting a slice of my cut tomato.
Oh yeah, that's super easy. It's very, very easy to regrow tomatoes. As a matter of fact, anytime I have, you see that? That's Aislynn right there. It's just Aislynn. No big deal. Aislynn. It's just Aislynn. Anytime I have tomatoes that start to get kind of like goopy and soggy in our tomato like basket, I usually just pull those out, and if I'm honest, I pull them out and stick them in a place, and then we get a little fruit fly infestation. But if I was doing it as I'm supposed to be doing it, I would literally be taking the tomato and putting it right into a little tiny pot with soil around it, and then it will sprout its own tomatoes. As a matter of fact, that's how a lot of my tomatoes got started this year after the freeze, because I had grabbed some of the tomatoes off of them like right as I knew I was about to have a problem, and they were all frozen, and then I just stuck them back in pots. And so I do a lot of that, where I just stick this, like I've got a pot here and I have no idea what's growing in it. It had a dill that was sprouted on its own. It's got some clover, and this is my Texas red salvia, and then boom, a tomato came up in there. So I must have stuck one of my little tomatoes like down in the pot to rot down there. So yeah, that's a really important part of the way I do things, and it's an important part of the planning where I am right now, because if I have gone through and started deadheading and using my seeds from last season and packaging them up in different ways, here I've got coriander, I've got lettuce, I've got zinnia and marigold. These are all new season like.
So this is a use of your time. I mean,
absolutely, it's a harvest. This is a harvest.
Okay, so you're purposefully taking the plant, drying it out sometimes, letting it dry on the shelf, and then you pick the seeds and put them in these bags, label them, and then you've got your own seeds to work from. These are seeds you would not have to order from a catalog or anywhere else. Exactly.
Now, they're my season seeds. They're acclimated to my particular area, and so what I would do is
they're yours.
Yeah, exactly. So what I would do is, you see that big dill seed flower sticking up out of the ground over there? I would just cut that off. The garden here, for those of you that haven't been following on a regular basis, the garden here, I'm almost to the end of it at this, because because we're actually moving to the farm. And so this garden is not getting the full attention that it would be if it was my main garden. My main gardens are now actually at the farm. But you can see that what I would be doing at this time of the year, and if you go back to last year's videos, you'll find me deadheading all my flowers, deadheading all my lettuce pods, all my cilantro, my dill, as my zinnias keep popping, I just pop the deadheads off of those, collect those. I actually let those dry out. I like to leave them in little, like almost like potpourri, little baskets and stuff all around my house, because I think that there's some vitality and life that comes with that. And then once they've had a year to dry out, then I'll pull them out as well. So these seeds that are in here, zinnia and marigold, are actually 2020. So they're the ones that got pulled out of this year's potpourri little baskets, put in the seed packages, and then I go ahead and all the zinnias that I harvest as I go through the garden that are dried out, I put them back in my little potpourri baskets. And then next year when I'm going through my seeds and getting to know my seeds and switching things out, I can just pull from those, clean them up, and put them in my baskets and stuff like that. And so that's an important part. And that's when I say getting to know what seeds you have available, that helps you to make a decision on what you need to order. So I know that I want to go ahead and order right now cabbage, Brussels sprouts, any tomatoes or peppers that I want to go ahead and start in the fall, eggplant. Those are all the seeds that I have to order right now. And then if I have any clue, which I have been paying attention to which seeds sell out fast, I know I'm going to need. Because in January, when most of the country's buying their seeds, or usually December, January is when most of the country's buying their seeds, they were having a sellout of a lot of things. Like there were a lot of seeds not available because a lot
that
more
was the
people
first
are growing.
season of buying seeds during the pandemic, and folks were buying a lot of new people to gardening. Were the supply and the demand was off.
Right, and I just think there's a lot more people in the world that are planting.
Yeah.
Actually, so distribution was off a little bit, and the amount of seeds. And that's the thing about this is the thing where I talk oftentimes about, if you're not utilizing something when you need it, then the supply and demand is off. So when we're talking about distribution or product at the farmer's market or seeds that you want to purchase, if you're not a regular purchaser at the farmer's market, but all of a sudden there's no vegetables at the grocery store because of a major freeze, then the people that shop at the farmer's market on a regular basis are going to be the first ones to get there to get the product, and it's going to be sold out. And as opposed to in the past, they would be there at the end of market without any product, or with lots of products still left on their table, and that's a supply and demand issue. It also goes back to, a lot of you guys know that concept of like that we lost a lot of the small mom and pops local stores when all of the big box stores started coming in, because people stopped using the small local stores and switched to the box stores, and then we lost all the small local stores. And if we get to an era where the box stores are not providing what we want anymore in terms of service and quality and stuff like that, we don't have anybody else to go back to. And so that's the reason why creating a nice balance between supporting your locals, keep making sure you buy some seeds every year just to kind of keep your flow going, making sure you stop by the farmers market, supporting the local farmers and stuff like that, is an essential part of a balanced lifestyle that keeps everything and all the economics in your area free flowing and easier to continue to grow. Like basically you're just planting the seeds for the future when you might need them in the future. And so as people were starting to order their seeds in January, that didn't order seeds in July or August, they learned that a lot of the stuff was already gone, especially certain products where like pelleted seeds are really important for people that are planting a lot of carrots and lettuce. But if you can't get access to pelleted seeds because they sold out at the beginning of the year, then you have to start keeping in mind when is the right time to order those products. So one of the things I have learned is I need to order my pelleted seeds right now so that I don't get into a situation where they run out before I get to them. And I'm going to need to get to them before everyone else gets to them. So I have to start planting carrots, which are the pelleted seeds I use in October. And then I have to start planting the pelleted lettuce seeds in about November. And if they've already run out their whole season of product and they have nothing left, then at the end of the year, then I'm in trouble, because I haven't done what I needed to do to prepare for that. So I actually purchase seeds this time of year. I actually purchase seeds from July through January, and I just kind of keep up with what I need. And the reason is because it keeps me able to get an idea of not only, okay, what do I have, what's vital enough to work. So like if I'm planting something that something, I don't have a good example of something right here that's gonna come up. But if I plant something that I know is gonna come up fairly quickly, I've got it at the correct temperature for soil to germinate. It's not germinating well, then I know that the seed's not good, then that gives me the indicator, okay, well then I need to go ahead and order that again, because those seeds are not as vital. It's the same thing with using some of these things. So this first stuff you use is going to be the stuff that you've already put aside and put back from last season, and then that's when you add back in the other stuff. And as you go through your seeds, it gives you an idea of what you need more of, because you used all your carrot seeds last year, or you used all your cabbage seeds, or you used all your Brussels sprout seeds. I used all my Brussels sprout seeds, had great success with Brussels sprouts, want to try that again. So this season I'm going to order 2 packages of seeds rather than 1. So that's something to do also, is like give yourself a chance by doing 1 seed package and just seeing how it works. And if you're one of those friends, like I have friends that they don't need a whole package of Juliet tomato seeds. They only need a few tomato plants. They're going to plant 5 seeds. That's going to give them at least 1 to 2 plants. They're good with that. So then what you do is you start to get into a situation where you do seed swapping, and you bring these baskets of seeds with you to an event and share the excess seeds that you have available for them, because you've got seeds to share, or just find friends and groups of friends where you can swap seeds. Like that, I find that to be a really good way to use a lot of the excess seeds that you have as well. Move seeds around quickly.
You host a seed swap from time to time.
I do, yeah. I like to host a seed swap. It's hot. It's too hot right now to host a seed swap, in my opinion. So I'll probably wait maybe till I don't know, September. Probably late September is when I'll do another one again. Or I'll find some place to do one inside. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, that's the kind of thing. And so as I'm looking through, like, and if you're wondering whether or not you should plant any seeds right now in the ground, definitely not. Don't plant seeds in the ground right now. If you've got a protected indoor space and you want to begin starting some of your tomatoes and peppers and things like that, that's perfectly fine. I'm certainly protecting all of my stuff, making sure it gets watered every single day, keeping it alive, all of that kind of stuff. And then what lives through this summer heat will be perfect and ready to go when I launch off again in late September, October, kind of depending on what the weather does. And so those are some things to really just keep in mind about getting started with your seed planting and going through things and starting to think about that. Like I said, I'm planting in July. I will begin planting basically like 70-day seeds that will be ready when I need 70-day, 80-day, 100 days, that harvest date. And remember, okay, so germination is usually about 2 weeks. So when you put it in the soil and you've got the soil at the correct temperature and you've got enough moisture for the seed to actually germinate, then the seed germinates. That usually takes about 2 weeks. From the moment the seed germinates, now you see the actual plant starting to come up, that's when you begin the dates to harvest. So that's when you say, okay, it's come up, it's going to be about 70 days, 100 days, you know, whatever. So if you look at that timeline, when you're looking at different types of cabbage, Brussels sprout, tomato, pepper, any of that kind of stuff, that's the timeline you're looking for. But you're going to have to do any of that germination in a temperature range below usually 87 degrees for most things. But still look at that. Look at what's the temperature for, I'm trying to see, I don't think that's on these things. Go ahead, you have a question.
Well, my question is it's really just a matter of preparedness. You're going to be doing these weekly videos, and come September or whenever you say, okay, it's time to plant those seeds now, everything you're saying is you have already done the work to get the seeds in your hand for when they need to be planted. If someone waits until you say it's time to plant these seeds, there's a risk that they can't find them if they haven't already got them.
Right, they can't find them, or you miss the best start of the window, because the most ideal for us is catching it throughout the entire window. So you're not just planting on this date to this date. You're basically planting for us starts in July with seeds starting indoors and then in the ground in October. And then we keep planting. We even plant inside in December and January, maybe even February. And then we stop planting in June, or May or June, just kind of depending on what happens with the weather. You know, this year I just now stopped planting because it was 70 degrees up until about a week and a half ago. But now the soil temperatures are skyrocketing. We haven't had any real rain in 2 weeks. So you've got to look at that in a way that's like, I can plant the seeds all this whole time. I can plant the flowers all this whole time. Now, I put in at the last minute a lot of broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage and stuff like that. Certainly put it in right after the freeze because it was all the baby plants that I had started that didn't freeze. And I produced a lot more cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, all of that stuff because I had those plants ready to go in the ground. And it just happened to be a year that worked. But I also kept putting plants in the ground till later. And some of them are just there. They're either just pretty there, or they're being eaten by the caterpillars or eaten by something else, which is perfectly fine because I have no issue with my garden being a safe sanctuary for all different kinds of creatures, including myself. And the more healthy and safe it is in that way, and things for everything to eat, that they're not over there eating the things I don't want them to eat, like my tomatoes or my eggplants or, you know, other stuff like that. Now, every once in a while you might find that there's something on there eating that or whatever, but it's few and far between because they're spread out everywhere. I actually noticed a really good example, and I have noticed this with the wasps, the red wasps in the past. I've noticed the red wasps love black-eyed peas or purple hull peas. They love any of the stuff that's gonna likely have like a lot of little creatures and insects and things all around it. Why? Because the red wasp is actually a beneficial insect in your garden. Flies down, grabs the caterpillar, takes the caterpillar off, and eats it or whatever. Well, one of the things that I've had an issue with in the summer times is the yellow jackets in the gardens or in the trees or whatever. But my experience so far, and of course we're still early and everything hasn't fermented on the trees and all of that kind of stuff. But the yellow jackets are actually, they don't care about me. And normally they're very aggressive. But I have created such a sanctuary with plenty of food for them to eat. The more sanctuary I create with plenty of places for them to be where they're not in my spaces, they're not on the wood swings and things that I'm trying to use. They're not in my spaces. They're out in other places that I have created for them with plenty of food to eat and plenty of things to eat. And that doesn't necessarily have to do with seeds. But it does have to do with the idea of just keeping plants planted all throughout the season, that you can keep things planted, and then keeping them alive through the summertime just creates this beneficial climate for everything to be more successful, including you, right? And to create a much more higher level of return on investment because you're letting things seed out, you're collecting the seeds from those. I promise you I will never ever have to buy black-seeded Simpson lettuce again unless I just choose to buy clear, clean seeds that I'm ready to restart with a new, that hasn't been hybridized by my particular pollinators and all of the things like that. Because every season I go through and harvest I let all of my lettuce from that variety grow up into seeds, flower, create seeds, and then I deadhead my lettuce. I collect all those lettuce seeds, and then I can just sprinkle them out anywhere. And the benefit for me with that is that it becomes ground cover for me. Like, it's not the plants it's not the very specific, I'm trying to grow this one particular type of tomato plant, this one particular type of zinnia. I'm trying to think of things that I might just spread the seeds, or lettuce. Basil. Like, I'm trying to grow something really specific, but all the rest of the seeds that I collect just gives me plenty of seeds to use to cover all of the ground around. And when I cover all of the ground around, number one, I keep life in my soil, I keep my soil healthy. But in addition to that, I also could potentially harvest from that as well. And so, and seeds that are geared towards my particular climate, so they're just going to be way more easy to manage and handle and stuff like that.
And because you're one of the things on this world that I love paying attention to, I've noticed in the recent past that you've gotten a lot more assertive, aggressive with flowers. And when you've got a big Ziploc bag full of flower seeds, I could just see you throwing them all over the place because you want flowers everywhere.
Yeah, and something, if you've got kiddos in the house, something that you could do is take a bag like this of like zinnia and marigold seeds and make take some clay, like actual real clay, not fake clay, but like
Earth clay.
like stuff that comes out of the ground,
Mm-hmm.
like the stuff we have everywhere in our area, and make a ball out of it with the seeds in it, and then have a seed bombing party where you go around the city and just like put seeds down. It's really, really good.
Just simply throw that ball of clay onto a lot or something?
Yes, and think about like what would have happened with that during this last, the past where we were just having rain. Right after that rain happened, all of a sudden seeds germinated and we had flowers late in the season. So like if you're used to driving through Texas to see the wildflowers, then you notice like usually the wildflowers are pretty much dead by May, or we've seen them in April, they're dead by May. If they're not dead, then all that's left is like coreopsis and things like that are pretty hardy. But we had, because of all that rain we had, all the seeds from the original deadheading of the wallflowers that fell on the ground just resprouted again. Like I have bluebonnets coming up again, like a next stage of bluebonnets coming up again. So all you're doing is just putting the seeds on the ground so that they're there and available to grow. And one thing to keep in mind when I talk about that soil temperature thing, the winter's not going to kill the seed. The cold weather, winter, all that's going to do is create hibernation for the seed. The seed's just going to stay there in the ground and just be ready for whenever it gets the right water conditions and everything to sprout, to germinate. Right temperature in the soil, all of that kind of stuff. What happens in the summertime, though, is that's when we actually kill a lot of the seeds in the soil. We actually terminate the seeds because the heat is so hot, it will actually kill the seed. So that's during the time that we're really not wanting to put any additional seeds in the ground right now, because we're not going to get into a situation where we actually see any later effects of that. And that's not to say that about everything, because clearly there are plenty of seeds that come up and grow crazy grass weeds, and I mean basically you can see which seeds can handle the really, really high soil temperatures, and it's mostly the grass and weeds and things that grow really regularly throughout the year in the summertime around here. So you may still see lots of these wild sunflowers coming up everywhere. You may still see lots of the okra even coming up everywhere. But again, look at the soil temperature on the package, and that's one of the things I wanted to point out here, is that I can actually look at, and in Johnny's seed catalog or online, I actually like to use a seed catalog, but then I do my actual ordering online. So I was going to look and see if I could find, because in the seed catalog, it's really easy. I mean, on the website, you're going to see next to the seed, and there'll be like one page. It's going to be this variety of seed, and then on that particular page is going to be this germination guide. Well, you can see that this particular plant can germinate at a pretty high temperature, right? I mean, 90 is too high, but it certainly can germinate in the springtime, because that's when our, spring is doing these temperatures right here. And then, of course, it can certainly germinate inside of a shady spot on your porch, because most of the time you can find a spot that's in the 77 to 87 range in the shade in our area. Okay, so those are the types of things you're looking for, and the more moisture that's in the soil. So like if we get a hurricane this year, whether it's a bad hurricane, I'm not manifesting a hurricane, by the way. I just want to be clear about that. As a matter of fact, I'm telling it, no, it's good, we're good, it's good. But if we get some of those nice tropical storms that bring in the rain that we need, that really actually helps us keep from being in drought, and have water precautions in our area, because it fills up our tanks basically, then our soil temperatures will actually be a little cooler, a little faster in the summertime. I mean, in the fall, when the fall temperatures come, that's when. And for anyone that actually goes to the beach and goes in the water at the beach, you can understand exactly what I'm talking about. How long the temperature of the water stays like really cool. Like, ooh, it's 70 something degrees out here, except the water is still 60. So we know when that works. That's usually for us around November, December, January, February. That's what's happening. It's cold outside, but the water's still a little warm, or vice versa. It's warm outside, but the water's still a little bit cold. But this time of year, when you start entering the water, you can tell that it's like there's nowhere you're going to go where even the water's cool, unless the water's air conditioned by some kind of a cooler, right?
Recently on the podcast, we've been talking a lot about having quote-unquote friends that are into a similar thing that you're into, so that you can talk with one another and trade ideas and success stories and failure stories. How important is it to have a community of gardening friends when those temperatures are getting close to so that everyone can kind of have a consensus of it's time to plant now. We're there. Does that happen?
Yeah, it definitely does. I will say that one of the things after the Hurricane Harvey situation that we had here, that knocked out a big portion of our actual area, but not the area where I live or where my group of people that I was gardening with in a community garden, where the community garden I was growing in was at. But because we ran the farmers market, we knew like where the growers were in the area. And we knew that a lot of our growers were actually in areas that were very drastically affected by the hurricane. But we also knew that a hurricane with that much rain, and it actually cooled our temperatures for a little while, would bring the soil temperature down. Now, it spikes back up. The actual heat goes back to where it normally is, but the soil temperature has already begun to get down to a temperature that you can begin planting seeds. And so what'll happen is what we did was we actually just said to each other, okay, it's time for us to put something in the ground, because a lot of the normal small farmers that we work with are not going to have anything because they're in the areas where they're rebuilding their farms. They're rebuilding their soil. There may not be any soil left on their property anymore because it all washed away in a massive hurricane flood, that kind of thing. So we said, okay, well, our soil temperatures are lower, and we need to plant as quickly as possible so that there is any product available at all at the farmer's market so that we have something. And so that's kind of in the course of your conversation of communities, yes, your sphere of influence, your sphere of community getting together and having those conversations and being able to say, okay, this is what we can do to, benefit our area that has dealt with this thing, or this is what we see has happened with the weather, and so now we know that it's time for us to go ahead and plant in this way or at this time, or whatever. Now, when you have a situation like that where the soil temperature drops, so you can direct sow, you can go ahead and direct sow seeds. You still want to be careful with planting seeds in the ground, and then what happens after the seed actually germinates. And that's because you will see an increase in temperatures again. So that happened to us in late August, and then we planted in September, and then the temperatures go back up in September. And so then we have to keep those plants alive as we go through September into October, when the temperatures at the end of October, sometimes not even until November or December, start to decrease. And then the other thing that happens is we see the up, down, up, down, up, down as we move through our fall, which is actually October, November, December, right? And in other people, December is winter, frozen, cold. You're definitely not gardening anymore. We actually might see a freeze, 33, 32, 31 in November, and then be up to 90 on Christmas Day. That could happen in our area. So at that point, we're just riding the wave of watching as we go through the winter and just keeping things alive and making sure we still have like the good greens and stuff like that we can grow during those types of years. But the soil temperature is extremely important when you're thinking about when to go into the ground and what to do after you've gone into the ground and whether or not your plants will actually germinate. And I will tell you, this was the first full year for me that I have pretty much done nothing but seed starting. I probably bought $20 worth of plants that I put in the ground this year, little baby plants that I put in the ground this year. All of my money went into seeds. And because of that, I learned very much so that the soil temperature of germinating your seeds is essential. You can see it. And I was a little bit lazy about this year, but with the way that I like to learn and teach, it was a hands in the dirt learning opportunity for me to say, okay, next year, if I want Brussels sprouts to actually germinate and not just waste a bunch of seeds, I need to be very particular about keeping it in a climate controlled situation where I can get the seeds to actually germinate. And then as soon as they germinate, then I can manage them on the outside with water and moving them into the shade if I need to, or any of that kind of stuff. But when you're talking about the germination, which is the key to getting yourself ahead of the curve and extending seasons and things like that, then you've got to make sure that you are keeping it in a climate controlled situation where you're getting that temperature that you want. Of course, in the springtime, it's easy to get it at the right temperature because we stay in that 65 to 85 range from February through usually the end of April for sure, sometimes May like this year. So, yeah.
Will you order, you say you're about to order some seeds. Will you order in one big go? Does it happen over the course of several weeks?
My guess is that in terms of kind of budget planning, I'm probably going to start purchasing about $200 worth of seeds a month as we go into all the way through to January would be my guess. So then I have to start gauging like which are the ones that I want to plant, and not just seeds, but also other plants that I want to get.
And then, like
in
you
that
said
timing.
earlier, the plants that sell out. You want to go ahead and get yours.
Yes. So last year, the whole year, I probably spent about $1,000 on plants and seeds for my budget. I expect that to go up this year, maybe even twice that much. But it also depends. I might be able to do that much, that exact same much. But I've also already got so many seeds of my own. So that's, you know, it's the second year phase of me doing market gardening, and you'll see that shift happen as we go through this next year, as I move into different gardens full time, as I begin to scale up and sell more produce and do more events and things like that. You'll see my production and me learning with my hands in the dirt how to get through each one of these scaling phases. So that's kind of a fun part about this whole thing as well. So, alrighty, I think that's probably all we have today. If you guys have any other questions, if you jump on this later, drop a line in there and I'll do my best to answer it in text form. One of the things that you'll learn about me, if you haven't already, is that I'm not as good with the words and the typing as I am with just communicating to you as face-to-face as I possibly can. So I like to try to do these. They're much easier for me to communicate what I need to communicate effectively, but I will go in and try to do the best that I can to answer the question, and I'll certainly send you the link to a video that would answer that question too, so that could give you the ability to have access to me speaking about that specific subject as well. Now don't forget, we launched the podcast tomorrow morning. We are on which episode are we on now?
Season 2, episode 42.
Season 2, episode 42. That means there's only 10 more episodes left in this season. How exciting is that? And if you're interested, now is a fantastic time to book me for one of the 2 consultations that I have up right now that are available right now. One of those is an edible landscape consultation. Could be like a edible homestead consultation. I'm charging $111 for that. It's about an hour and a half of coaching time with me, plus an analysis where I come out to your land and give you the advice of where I'd start, where I'd get going, where I'd get planting, all of those types of things. And now's a fantastic time to do that, because as you're rounding out this season and preparing for the next season, you start to get your beds and everything in a place that you want them to be in order to be ready to go in October when it's time to get harvesting and going with our new season, right? And then the second one is a fairly new one, but it's also $111. It's also about an hour and a half of my coaching time plus an analysis at the end of that I would send out to you. And that is a business restaurateur consultation. And basically what that is that if you yourself run a business and are interested in doing some farm-to-table work at your business, what it would look like purchasing from a restaurant, what a menu would look like if you prepared a menu, how to transition yourself slowly into working with the produce that's actually available from the local farmers. I can help you out with that and get your business on the right track and moving in the right direction. It's a great time for that because you can begin planning right now for what products are going to be available in our main harvest season, which goes from November through July. So those are some things available. I have lots more things coming up. I'm actually about to launch. I had a fantastic idea come to me about doing a self-love masterclass. So that's coming up very soon. Keep your eye out for that as well. I love you guys. I hope you have a fantastic day, a fantastic week. Happy Father's Day to all of those strong, supportive people in our world that are helping to support us all. I love you.